Douglass, in a lot of ways, and I think this reflects his turn in between his early abolitionist work, where he gives his first speech to an interracial audience in 1841, where he begins working with William Lloyd Garrison, and he has this sense that the United States and the Constitution are very much tied to slavery and its enforcement. So he's looking for Garrison, Douglass, and a variety of folks that Garrison influenced were looking to separate from or to transform the United States such that it got away from the Constitution, which was read as a pro-slavery document, and just create something new. But in the 1850s, Douglass transforms into a figure that is very interested in political abolitionism. And he takes up the U.S. Constitution. He says, no, this isn't a pro-slavery document, but this is an anti-slavery document. And from that perspective, he builds on the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, so on and so forth, to really, I feel, embrace a type of optimism in the United States that's tied to its founding values and to what those founding values can represent over the long term. He sees something enduring in those. So he even reads the Constitution as an anti-slavery document, even the Three-Fifths Compromise, or the Three-Fifths Clause in the Constitution. He says, well, this still means that the South is deprived of 2/5 of its voting population. So he does a lot of gymnastics, some of these rhetorical, but to really present the Constitution as a document that, if we live it out and if we truly embrace its values, can actually lead to a productive vision for the United States and its future. Part of the book that I wrote recently, it's called American Dark Age, Racial Feudalism and the Rise of Black Liberalism. And it draws on many of Douglass's writings, his pronouncements, his thinking about politics in the antebellum era in particular. And it examines how he and a collective of other Black writers and thinkers were interested in these ideas of liberalism, so individual liberties, egalitarianism, this idea of moral universalism, and the idea that things can get better over time, but where they stop short. And I'm thinking of Douglass, Mariah Stewart, who's one of Douglass's contemporaries, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, and William Wells Brown. They all had different ideas about the Constitution and its relevance and how it fit in, but they all believed that America could progress, that things could get better, but they didn't have this idealistic notion that just because time is going on, progress will happen. They used their political appeals, they used their political voices, and they worked to mobilize people to engage in political action in order to push their auditors to transform the United States into what it can become. So I'd say mostly, if we're looking at Douglass's immediate circle, the people that he was reading, writing, in conversation with, many of them had a positive vision of the United States. But at the same time, there are other people, Alexander Crummell and others, who said the United States isn't going to be redeemable. So he decided to go off to seek new societies in other places away from the United States through the colonization movement. Just like we experience disappointments and setbacks, drawbacks, Douglass was experiencing similar feelings throughout the arc of his career. But I think one of the things that we can draw from his thinking now that can help sustain us is his commitment to coalitions across racial lines, across class lines, across lines of gender as well. And I think we can take from him ideas of how to think about joining together in ways that aren't exclusionary, and in ways that can allow us to recognize the humanity in one another. Douglass was all about telling his story, representing his story, and listening to those of others as he was engaged in this mission of making the United States live up to its values.